Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the symptoms that I had with chronic fatigue syndrome, the various degrees of severity that I had throughout the different stages of my recovery period with chronic fatigue syndrome. For those of you that are new here, my name is Kassem and I'm a structural engineer. I'm 35 years old and I had chronic fatigue syndrome for over 10 years before I finally recovered. So in this series, we're going to be talking to you about various different subjects pertaining around the subject of chronic fatigue syndrome, otherwise known as ME/CFS. We're going to be talking to you about the highs and lows and everything in between so that you can learn how to navigate yourself through this illness. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So the first symptom that I want to talk about to you today is the debilitating chronic fatigue that I had. It's just basically, the way I can describe it is that it happens after you wake up. You notice it from the moment that you open your eyes. It's that debilitating fatigue when you wake up and you realize that you have had no refreshing sleep. This was the most chronic kind of like symptom that I had. It was very, very difficult to deal with because it was prolonged, persistent. It was a very stubborn symptom. It was embedded very much in my illness on a daily basis. Everything that I was trying to do was a struggle. From the moment I, woke up, it was very, very difficult to get out of bed, to put my clothes on and to get ready for work. It was, doing those simple things that we all take for granted when we're living our daily routine. It felt, I was 24 years of age at the time when I first got chronic fatigue syndrome, and it felt like I was in my 70s or 80s. Incredible, and I had to exert an incredible amount of effort and stress on my body just to be able to get up and do the simple things, to go to work, to cook, to play sports, to do my favorite hobbies. I wasn't able to enjoy everything because of this debilitating fatigue that I had on my body. So work, socializing, sports, all the things that I really love to do in my life, it was just all a very, very big struggle. I was tired but wired at the same time. My body just I couldn't feel how to finally relax after a long day. And it just felt like my system was constantly in overdrive. My nervous system was working in overdrive and it couldn't just relax. So I couldn't wind down so I can finally sleep. It was just, a very persistent and annoying symptom to have with chronic fatigue syndrome. I couldn't relax and I couldn't go to sleep, and this kind of led me onto my second symptom, which was insomnia. So, for those of you that that can't get enough restful sleep, you know what it feels like. It's just a very annoying symptom to have because you cannot feel rested, you cannot feel energized to get on with your day. And it took me, before I got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, it took me maybe about 20 minutes maximum to be able to go to sleep. And I would sleep for anywhere between 8 to 9 hours. And that was how much I needed so I could feel rested the next day. After getting chronic fatigue syndrome, it took me ages to get to sleep. I would spend hours and hours in bed, tossing and turning left and right, trying to get myself to sleep, and it just wasn't working for me. I used to feel very anxious as well because I would think to myself, okay, if I'm not able to get enough sleep, how am I going to be able to function for work the next day? Everything was just a struggle, and sleeping was one of the most frustrating things for me because I couldn't rest, I couldn't shut down. My system felt like it was overstimulated and working in overdrive. And I tried everything that I could think of in the book, whether it was getting herbal teas like chamomile tea, lavender tea. I went to the sleep therapist to get sleep medication, doing different things that I was looking up on YouTube. Nothing seemed like it was working for me. This was very annoying because it made a vicious cycle in between sleep and fatigue. So because I wasn't sleeping very well, I was constantly fatigued, and I was showing up at work with by being completely sleep deprived. So I couldn't focus at work. It was before I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I loved my sleep. I would sleep anywhere from 8 to 9 hours, and it was very, very dear to me. I had, always kind of like tried to take care of myself, to take care of my sleep, because I'd wake up in the morning after a good night's sleep, and I'd feel completely energized and enthusiastic to start my day. But after chronic fatigue syndrome, all of this just went out the window. I was getting anywhere between 3 to 4 hours of sleep. It was taking me hours in order to fall asleep, and just everything felt like it was completely scrambled, and nothing was working well for me. The next symptom I want to talk to you about today is brain fog. I had a lot of brain fog. For those of you that don't know brain fog, what it is, it's almost self-explanatory. It's basically this very foggy feeling that you have in your mind and in your head, where it makes it very difficult for you to concentrate, to work, and to even remember very, very basic things. Both my short-term and long-term memory started to feel like it was deteriorating over this prolonged period of time. I was struggling to remember things. I was struggling to get things done at work. As I told you before, I was working at, whilst I was sick as a structural engineer, and it was a very, very demanding job, and so I wasn't able to function mentally and physically, and this was very, very challenging for me. The next symptom that I want to talk to you about is the blurry vision that I had. From the get-go, when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I remember waking up the next day, opening my eyes, and I just couldn't see very well. So I thought this was a temporary kind of effect because of the lack of sleep that I was getting. But after a few months, I got tired of trying to fix this on my own. So I decided to go to see an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, in other words. I remember that day very well. I was waiting very, very patiently in order to see the doctor. When I finally went into his office, he saw me for about 20 to 30 minutes. He examined my eyes, and he said, "Your eyes are in very, very good condition. Don't worry about anything. Just go to the optician. He can prescribe you some glasses, and you should be able to be A-okay." And everything was not okay at all. I went to the optician. I remember doing the eye tests. I couldn't see very well, and even after they put the testing glasses on my eyes, I still couldn't see very well. So before and after the optician, after getting prescribed these lenses, I still couldn't see very well, and so I was going to one doctor after another. I went to a physiotherapist also for my joint and muscle pain. I had a lot of muscle pain, especially after doing exercise at the gym or when I was playing football. I couldn't play football without getting these intense muscle pains and joint pains. I even couldn't type on the computer very well because of this joint pain that I had. It was pains that I was getting in different areas all over my body, and so I said to myself that I need to see someone about this. I went to the GP, to the general practitioner. They told me that everything looked like it was fine. They couldn't explain why I was having these pains, and so I also went to a physiotherapist to be able to try to rehabilitate myself from these symptoms that I was getting. And even then, the physiotherapist looked at me and he said, Ahmed, it doesn't make sense that you have all of these pains all over your body. Something just isn't adding up. And so he prescribed these different exercises that I should start doing. And he also gave me some, ginger tea that I should start drinking. And that was all just very temporary kind of like relief. It didn't really help me address the core issue of my illness. I also had tinnitus. It's basically this ringing sound that you have in your ears. It was also very annoying because I couldn't hear very well. And so I had blurry vision, I couldn't hear well. And so it just felt like my senses weren't kind of like, giving me up the correct reflection that I needed from my daily life. All of these things were very, very frustrating. I just felt like I didn't have my health with me, and things were just getting worse and worse. Over the years, my health started to deteriorate further. In the very beginning, my chronic fatigue syndrome could have been classified as being mild. I was able to do some kind of like movement and exercise, to some degree with having all these pains, but I was able to do these exercises. But a few years down the line, I started to feel more and more exhausted, to the point where I couldn't even walk for 20 minutes a day. Doing that was an incredibly big struggle for me. I remember my legs felt so heavy that I felt like I was dragging myself along the road to be able to get from point A to B. And, things were just not going well at all. And at that point, after a couple of years of suffering with chronic fatigue syndrome, I completely lost the kind of energy and zest that I had for life. That feeling of happiness and joy when you wake up in the morning and you want to get on with your day, I just lost that completely. And I didn't know where to turn, and things were not looking like they were getting any better. I went from a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being having very, very terrible health, to 10 being perfect. Before I got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, I had my health being rated as a 10 out of 10. Everything was fantastic until after I started deteriorating a couple of years down the line. My health fell to around a 3 out of 10. So a very, very big difference. It was at my lowest point, it felt like it was a very, very big struggle, until I started finally putting the pieces together and I figured out what were the key things for me in my recovery. I just kindly ask you to bear patience with me. I'm gonna make a couple of more videos so I can paint the whole picture for you before I tell you exactly what helped me and where I found my breakthrough in my recovery, which helped me to get back to where I am today. Until the next video, my name is Kassem. Thank you so much for watching.